Ready?
Ready? Okay, let's do this.
Yeah.
All right. Well, okay. My name is Grace Dameron. I am at Guelph Guitar Repair, honored to do this interview today on behalf of the Luth Group with Steve Rozitis of Our Guitars. I will start with a land acknowledgement and a challenge for you. So today, though, it feels hard for me to do a land acknowledgement. I might be out of practice, and I feel like maybe the fire in my heart for doing them isn't burning as strongly as it has in the past. It's right now been 2 years since Canada was rocked by the confirmation of anomalies presumed to be more than 251 unmarked graves around and on the grounds of a former residential school in British Columbia. This wasn't a discovery. We call it a discovery, but survivors of the school had said for decades that there was a graveyard there. It became a catalyst for many other identically heartbreaking searches for years to come. We must acknowledge the deep harms colonization imposed on Indigenous people, the persistent racist policies that marginalize minorities, and the institutions like residential schools that were designed to fracture families and extinguish entire communities. I reside on treaty lands on the territory of the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nations. My guest is in Calgary, Alberta, Treaty 7 territory, home of the Tunaha, the Tsuut'ina, Siksika, Blackfoot, Stoney Nakoda, and Métis. The purpose of a land acknowledgement is to pause for a moment and center the lives and communities that live on these lands before colonization, because it's at their exclusion and erasure that we have been able to work and live in these areas. It's okay if it feels uncomfortable. I see our group here as a branch of decolonization because we are founded on the pursuit of helping each other improve our craft. We are decentralizing information and supporting each other to find greater successes, and that's amazing. As an online community, I feel it's important to ground ourselves for a moment and acknowledge the work going on in our communities. Think about what role your business plays in making a good social impact. What role do you play in creating an inclusive and safe space? Today I have the honor of talking to Stephen Rozitis of Our Guitars. Stephen, we kind of preliminarily talked about what's going on with you. And if I might summarize, just as a teaser for everybody, you've grown a business 40-fold from where you started profit-wise. You've included 4 other luthiers or 5 other luthiers in your practice and are able to provide Calgary with unprecedented speed of repairs from your own literal side yard. Can you please tell us more about this? Let's get into the nitty-gritty. Teach us what you have learned recently about how to grow a business from a hobby to an incredibly profitable and successful and pleasing to your musical community career.
Sure. Well, thank you very much. That was a great land acknowledgement and for having us here. It wasn't easy. It didn't happen overnight, but I can share you guys experience. I don't really like to tell anybody what to do or to give advice, but what I can share is what's worked for me and where I've come from and where we're going. So right now we're in the garage. This is a 2-car garage, 20 by 20. It's just got some big power tools in the back that I've kept there. And then I'll flip this camera so you can see the big mess of the other benches. But we used to do all the guitar work. To be honest, some of it even happened on the freezer out there in the corner. Probably 10,000 guitars got fixed on that freezer. But you don't need a fancy space. You don't need, you need some fancy tools, obviously, but you don't need crazy expensive. You don't need all the name brand stuff when you're getting started. Personally, how I got started in this is I took an apprenticeship with a guy here in town, and he lived in his shop. He was like this hermit, mystical guitar wizard guy that everybody went to. And because of that, he was so incredibly busy. And not only did he train, But then he was also doing repairs as well. And so when I got there to do the training program, he had over 200 guitars in the pile, we call it, like the lineup, the workload, the intake. And so it was my genius idea to just, like, when a new guitar came in, put a piece of masking tape on the case saying the date it came in and the date we promised it out by. That was like a revolution for him and his business. Where for me, it was quite common sense, because I was getting phone calls every day, because I worked for him after I did the apprenticeship. And so I would answer the phones, and every single day I'd get phone calls. Hey, where's my guitar? Where's my guitar? It's been 3 weeks. It's been 3 months. It's been 3 years. Where's my guitar? And so I started thinking, why don't we tell people, like, when their guitars are going to be ready, and then put a little date on the case and have them ready for that date. We can come in the shop tomorrow, we look at all the cases and go, oh, these two need to be out today, so let's start with those ones, kind of thing. And then we had a falling out when it came to taxes, because I was going to pay mine, and that put him in a liability, tax situation. I don't want to assume anything, but he got quite upset when I told him I was going to pay my taxes and I had to declare this income. And so I said, that sounds like a you problem. I'm not going to end up in 15 years where you are stressing out about not paying my taxes for 10 years or 15 years, and then my apprentice getting me red flagged or something. It's like, I can't do that, And so we had to part ways. And it was quite sad, and it wasn't only to do with that. He actually fired me. He kept me on after the tax fight. This is a funny story, to kind of put things in perspective too, because this line of work, I find you're so close to things. Like, you're literally, like, physically 6 inches away from your work, sometimes closer. Mm-hmm. But then also with your clients, like, you're shaking people's hands, you're taking the guitar back to make a small adjustment, giving it back to them. You try a note to see if it buzzes, they try a note to see if it buzzes. Like, you're often very close. There might be your friends, they might be your family, might be your bandmates. And so the things that become so important and so serious can become less so if you just zoom out a little bit. Like, nothing has to be super stressful. It's typically not life and death. Nobody's dying, nobody's going to jail. It's not going to be that stressful in the end. But yeah, so how I ended up parting ways with my mentor was, we had this fight about taxes, but he still needed me because he was so busy. He had all these guitars to fix. So I worked there for a while, and he got me to do this job that I was not comfortable doing. It was a splice crack repair on a top on, I think it was an old Guild or a Maren. Like, it was a vintage guitar, so it's worth more than my car. And I've never done this job before. And I told him that. I said, I didn't do this during my apprenticeship. I've watched some videos, I've read some books, but I've never done this job, and I'm really uncomfortable. Like, I'd rather you just do it and kind of show me the first time, then I can do the second one maybe. And he said, well, to be honest, I'm scared to do it. It's really hard. And, you're younger, you got better eyes, your hands are less shaky. Like, maybe you'll just have a better luck at it than me. And so the first time we spliced it, it was great. It worked really good. The splice went in, the grains were perfect, except then you hold it under the light. And the way that he had cut the splice for me was the reverse. Like, how the run out, the grain orientation goes one way on half of the top and the other way on the other half of the top. So he had gotten the run out or the grain orientation wrong. And so you could see it in the light, in the reflection. So out comes that splice. We had to do a second one. That one, he was out for lunch, and I dyed the color just a hair too dark. So that one had to come out. And then the third one, I can't remember what happened, but something else happened. And, he just was, like, losing his mind, jumping up and down, steam coming out of his ears, just not being a good leader, basically, not helping me, not coaching me, basically blaming me for doing something that I told him I didn't know how to do in the first place. And he said, you're fired. Give me the keys. You're out of here. And I'm not going to tell this story, but I had got fired from my last real job. Like, I worked in an office for a software company before. That's how I saved up for my apprenticeship. And I taught guitar lessons. I was still teaching guitar on the side, because, as you guys know, anyone getting started in this, it takes years to build a full-time income, right? To build a client list that can actually support one person full-time, let alone a team, takes probably 10 years of doing good work. So you need another source of income, basically. So I taught guitar full-time for 17 years as this business was growing. And I just stopped teaching guitar about 4 years ago as this business got busier. But yeah, so Miles fired me, And I was really, really upset. Like, I'm not gonna lie, I was crying on the way driving home, tears in my eyes, thinking my life is over. I have nothing. I got fired from my last office job. I don't have a resume now because that was like the last 2 years of work. And I had done like, warehouse work, night shifts, kitchens, that sort of stuff before that. So my resume was not great. So I was basically unhireable. And this was my fallback. I didn't have a plan B. This was my plan A. I was going to fix guitars and maybe make guitars. So I was distraught driving home from that day. I will never forget the feeling coming home and then thinking my life is over and seeing my parents' car in the driveway. I was still living at home. I think I was 22. And I said, that's weird. It was like noon. Like, my dad works, my mom works. Why are they home? So I opened the door and they had just gotten in. They're like still in the shoe room, taking off their shoes. And I was like, we kind of both looked at each other with this surprised look, like, what are you doing here? And I was like, what are you doing here? And they're like, well, you first, you look distraught. And I'm like, yeah, I just got fired. Miles just fired me. And they were like, well, don't worry about that. Your mom's cancer came back. We were just at the doctor. And so immediately, my whole life that I thought was like this big, my whole life was over, just exploded, and was like, whoa, I don't care about work. I don't need any money. I don't need, like, who cares about bills and stuff when you're finding out news like this?
Yeah.
So it really helped me, as sad as that sounds, put things into perspective. So when I get stressed, because I still get stressed, I'm the same like everybody else. You work so many hours on this thing, and then you take a step back and go, oh, it doesn't look the way I thought it was going to look. Now I got to start again. You sometimes have to take a step back and realize what's really important, and how you only have so much stress in your life. You shouldn't be stressing about the stuff that doesn't really need it. So fast forward, I was looking for work. Basically, I took my resume to every music store in town with a guitar, my own guitar that I had refretted while I was working with Miles. And that was my resume, basically, is here, check this guitar out. You can compare it to any guitar in your store and it will play as good or better. Get your best player to play this with their favorite guitar in the store, and I guarantee you they're going to like the feel of this one better. Mm-hmm. And it took a few months, but one store called me back a couple months later saying, we got your resume. I remember you coming in with the guitar. It really made a difference, bringing the guitar and like showing us your work, and our guy's leaving and we're looking for a guy. So why don't you start your own shop? And I said, sure, great. And so the deal at that store was the shop rate was $60 an hour, and I got 36. So I got 60%. It was 60-40. The store took 40. I took 60. And that means basically for me, I didn't have to pay rent. I didn't have a fixed expense. I didn't have any fixed overhead. And for them, the benefit is that the more money I make, the more money they make. Mm-hmm. So instead of me paying them like $1,000 a month rent or whatever, if my business starts doing better, they also see the benefit of that as well. So it was kind of a win-win. And basically it was the only offer I got, so I took it. And that store was called Music Centre Canada. It was on a pretty busy street in Calgary. Our city has 1 million people, so it's not huge, but it's not a small town. Like for Canada, I think we're the 3rd or 4th biggest city in the country. Yeah, there for 13 years. And the whole impetus that got me started about thinking about this, instead of it being like a sole proprietor, just me, like the reason I called it Our Guitars and not Steve's guitar business is because one day I might not own this business. One day I might give it to my children or one of my apprentices, or who knows, somebody might win the lottery and want to buy a guitar business. That is hard to do if it says Steve's guitar business and his name's not Steve. But it was my ex-wife. I'm remarried now, but I was married for a short time in 2012 and 2013. She wanted to go on this elaborate honeymoon down to New Zealand and Bali and Australia. And it's like, once you go there, you can't go for a weekend. It takes like 72 hours to get there. And then there's jet lag. And so you got to stay for a long time. So she wanted to go for 40 days. And I said, I'm going to lose my job. Like I'm literally the only guy that runs this shop. If I say I'm gone for 40 days, like they gave me unlimited unpaid vacation as long as I gave them notice, but I couldn't leave for 40 days. That they would just find someone else basically. And she said, well, why don't you find someone else? Why don't you train Curtis? He was the guitar player in my band at the time. He loves guitar. He teaches guitar in the evenings. He might have some free time during the day. Why don't you train him? And so I thought, okay, that's a great idea, And so I said to Curtis, because he didn't have much money at the time, and Like I had to pay for my apprenticeship. It was like 11 grand in 2007. So double that or triple that today's money, with inflation, that's a lot of money for back then. It took me 2 years to save up for that while living with my parents, working full-time job and teaching 60 students a week. So that would be 30 hours a week of guitar lessons. So I was working like 70 hours a week for 2 years to save up for that apprenticeship. It was not cheap. And Kurt didn't have that kind of money. And so I said to him, why don't we do this? I'll train you for a year for free. So you don't have to pay for the training and I don't have to pay you for a year. And then after that, I'll give you the same deal that they're giving me. I give you 60% of what you can make. And he said, sure, that's great. And so we did that for a year. And then he ran the shop for those 40 days while I was gone. Nothing fell apart. I mean, we had some jobs that he couldn't do that were a little complicated, or certain clients that just said, you know what, I'll wait till Steve's back. I don't trust anyone else with my guitar. There's always those type of people. But that sort of opened my eyes to realize that, whoa, we can scale this thing a little bit, because scaling a personal business is extremely difficult. Because I can only fix so many guitars in one day. And to be honest, I only like to work 4-hour shifts. Like I might do 2 of them in a day. So I'll work 8 hours, but I don't like doing them 8 hours consecutively, because that 8th hour is nowhere near as productive as your first hour. And you don't want to be the 8th or 10th or 12th guitar on the bench that I've done. My eyes are going to be blurry. I'm going to be hungry. I'm going to be tired. So I find that I'm personally more productive and my team is more productive on 4-hour shifts. And then you can just get the work done. And as soon as you're feeling like you lack focus, hey, you're done for the day. Or you can go take a break and come back in a couple hours. But yeah, so scaling this thing becomes tricky because it's so personal. Again, you're so close. One person's working on one guitar. You can't really assembly line it. I guess you could, one guy takes all the strings off, the next girl does all the fret work, the next guy does all the restring, and then the third person does the setup. Maybe, but that's not how we run it. I prefer to run it once you start the project, it's your guitar to the end kind of thing. So if you open the case, you're going to do pretty much that whole job, unless somebody specializes. Like I have a girl, Catherine, who specializes in like crack and structural repairs. She comes from the violin making school and she was trained on those sorts of instruments. And so we typically will give her the cracks because she's just better at them. They end up looking nicer. She can do them in half the time, so she makes more money. And then the boys don't have to worry about, spending an hour on this crack that only pays a half hour. They can do what they're good at. But yeah, so to scale this, you need more people. That's the only answer, is you need a team. And I've been to a lot of different cities. I like to travel and see different places. And I always want to go and see the guitar shops. And Nashville, I'll never forget, they had this crazy, I forgot the name because there was a couple. We went to 3 or 4, but this one was the biggest one. And they had 12 techs running full-time, 8 hours a day. And their pile was bigger than Miles's was. It was like 300 guitars deep. They were running 12 techs full-time. And to get a setup that took an hour, like a billable hour, was a month wait. 4 weeks to 6 weeks, which for me, like I play in a band. I'm not professional, but I had 2 gigs yesterday. We played a wedding with one band and a festival with the other band. And most of my clients, a lot of them play in bands either at the amateur or the professional touring level. You can't be without your instrument for 4 weeks or 6 weeks, like especially for something that's as simple as a setup. It just wouldn't work for a lot of people, a lot of the clients we serve. And after working in a shop that did that, I vowed I would never, ever run our shop like that. So my business model is basically, it used to be a week when it was just Curtis and I. And once we booked more guitars than we could do in a week, we would just stop booking guitars, because it doesn't make sense. If you're going to leave your guitar here and I'm not going to open the case until the 15th, why don't you bring it on the 14th and then you can pick it up on the 15th kind of thing. I'll open the case the next day, pencil you in, and then you just bring it in. But now that we have more people, so how I got Tyler, my second apprentice, so the third team member, including myself, is my new wife. She came up with the best idea. Always listen to your wives. If there's one lesson you guys can take away from this, is always listen to your wives, because they think about things in a way that you wouldn't think about it. So Curtis and I were working down at Music Center, and again, thanks to my ex-wife, she said, if we move close to downtown, the marriage will get better. And of course it didn't. 3 months after we bought this house, the we're getting divorced and the house isn't worth what we paid for it. So somebody has to take on this depreciating asset and service the debt on it. Otherwise, we're both going to split, negative 40 grand. And nobody wanted that. So I ended up taking the house and paying it for it while now it's probably worth what I paid for it 7 years ago. But I was letting clients come to the house because we're so close to downtown that a lot of the artists and the people who gig, the people who use their guitars, like I have lots of guys who play 6-7 nights a week, like they're full-time professional musicians, and they live close to downtown. That's where all the gigs are. So they live way closer to this place. My shop was down in the suburbs, just 30 minutes away. So a lot of the clients, like the professionals and artists, were dropping guitars off here. And then I would just drive them down to the shop, fix them up, and then bring them back, and they could pick them up here. My wife's brilliant idea was, why don't you just build a workbench in the shop, like in your garage, double the tools. You don't need that many tools. You're not going to be doing crazy stuff here. Anything crazy you can bring to the store and do it. But why don't you just have like a bench here, and then you can sort of work here. And then I said, oh, that's a great idea. So I started only going to the shop a couple days a week just to refill the sandpaper, do any customer relation stuff. And Curtis was pretty much running that shop, and I was running the shop here at my house. And this guy Tyler shows up and he says, oh, this is pretty cool. I used to do this. I was like, what do you mean? He's like, I used to be a guitar tech. I worked in Sweden. I did this course, about 10 years ago, and this is great. And I was like, oh, dude, if you like this, because he was coming in the front door to just take the guitar in, write him a quote. I said, you should come in the back, see the garage. And he's like, dude, this is amazing and convenient. I walked here. I live on 21st Avenue. I'm 2 blocks away. And I said, do you want a job? Because we're pretty busy here, and I could use the help, basically. And so I built another bench here, and then Tyler started working for me. And my friend Travis, he wanted to work for me for years and years. Every time he would bring a guitar, he's like, dude, you got to let me work here. I'd sweep the floors. He's an electrician. And I eventually, after years of this, I said to Travis, I was like, Travis, you got to let me come work for you. I'll come on the electrical site and I'll cut wires and I'll sweep the floor. And he's like, he just looked at me. He's like, dude, no, no, you're going to either kill yourself or you're going to slow me down. Like, I can't have you coming on an electrical site uneducated and unskilled and stuff. And I was like, yeah, that's why I can't have you sweeping the floors in the guitar shop. You're just going to slow me down, Sorry to say that. I don't mean to be rude. And then I was playing a wedding with a band that I played in, and he was in the crowd, just one of the guests at this wedding. And he came up to me after the gig and he's like, dude, I figured it out. What if I pay you to train me? Then I can hang out. You can train me so that I can do the work to your level, and you can pay your bills too. You're not like losing time. And I was like, okay, let me like run some numbers and think about this, maybe write like a program or a syllabus, and how long is it going to be? How much it's going to cost? How long are the shifts? Blah, blah, blah. And let me get back to you. We'll have lunch. And so I did that, and I offered him 100 hours of training. At the time, the shop rate was around about $100 an hour. So I said, because he's buying 100 hours, I'll give him 20% off. So I gave him, it was $8,000 for 100 hours of training. But then I'll start paying you right after that. And even if you only work like 1 day a week, you'll make that money back in a year or two. So it's a pretty good return on your investment. He said, sure. That was the first time I ever acted, like, other than Curtis. Sorry?
Why would you do that? Intentional.
Yeah, where was I? Oh yeah, Tyler walks in. So I had Tyler, then Travis. I was training Travis. And he was an electrician, so he was already familiar with tools. He was already familiar with electrical, not at the millivolt level, but at the volt level, and it's pretty much the same concepts. So he had some of the skills already required in this field. So he was very easy to train, and he was a paramedic before he was an electrician. So he's an educated and skilled worker already. So to come into a field that also requires education and some level of hand skills, it was very natural for him. And he still works for me on Saturdays because he has a full-time job. He's still a master electrician. But then COVID happened in 2020, and the store shut down. Not by mandate, the government, maybe they did eventually, but we shut down before it was like mandated that all non-essential businesses had to close, because the sales staff didn't feel comfortable at the very beginning when there was no information, there was no vaccines, people didn't really know. And And unfortunately, when you work retail, like I was lucky I had a little room upstairs. So I only dealt with the repair clients. You know, I didn't see the day-to-day 98% of the walk-in traffic.
Right.
And just unfortunately, when you're working with retail, you're going to get that 2 to 4% of people that become a problem, and, you know, coughing and runny nose and wanting to shake your hand. And so they just didn't feel comfortable and they couldn't staff the store. So they had to close the store for 3 months. And so I said to Curtis, just come to the shop here. I made another bench. That's when we got the freezer going. So I was working on the freezer, let the boys have the good benches and the good tools, and I would have like the tertiary set of like extra tools and the dull nut files and stuff.
So you got 3 guys at this point moving into your garage? 3 benches plus the freezer.
So one guy was up at, that was the good bench because of the sun, except about 2 o'clock, the sun hits the frets and goes right in your eyes.
Yeah.
And then that was the second bench. And then freezer was actually over there in that corner.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it was tight. It was very tight. And we did that for 3 years or
I
2 years.
think you and I might have had a chat in my in my on my Instagram. It's somewhere that you and I had a chat at that time, because I know there were multiple people in your shop.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so how I was running it then is the clients would come to the front door, because obviously I just didn't want clients to see this. I'm not very organized. Organization is not my speciality. I literally just got incorporated, and this will come back at the end when we start talking like strategy and finance. I just got incorporated last month after doing this for 15 years. I just hired like a professional tax strategy consultant person to help me organize this, you know, from the back end as a business. Because I just basically used the same model that the store paid me, like a percentage wise, and I paid my guys cash at the end of every shift. And it's all piecework, same like I got paid, same like I still get paid. This job pays an hour. If you can do it in 30 minutes, you make double the rate. If it takes you 2 hours, you make half the rate. There's a standard that you have to hit. And once you've done 1,000 of them, or some jobs, as you guys know, just go perfectly, and you can do them in half the billable time, the majority don't, and you end up spending more time than you can bill for. But we never charge the customer for that. The customer gets a written quote with the exact services billed out line by line that's in triplicate. So they get a copy when they leave. I have a copy to then give them as a receipt. And then the third copy is for accounting at the end of the year. And so, yeah, it's all been piecework. You get paid for what you do. I give them a raise every year. And again, we'll get to that once I finish this story here. I've got one more line on the story, and then we'll start talking actual numbers. So, yeah, COVID happened. They shut down the store. We're working 3 of us in here. It's crazy. And then the store reopens, and the owner tries to dick us around with our contract. And he had bought in the store 2 years prior. So we had already had a contract negotiation. When he bought the store, he didn't buy my contract. I had to renegotiate. The deal that I had with the previous owners was not the deal that I was bringing forward to him, because the previous owners hired me with no experience, no clients, no staff, no brand, no website, no Instagram, no Google reviews, no skills, you know, didn't have 25,000 guitars under my belt. Now I'm bringing a lot more to the table.
It's a total different business you're offering now.
Completely different negotiation, right? Yeah. From where I'm looking at it, and also from where he's looking at it. Like, if you want the old rate, the 60-40, you go hire some kid right out of training, right out of school, who's worked on 100 guitars. But I want 80-20. That's where I started. I was happy to play ball, and we negotiated down to, he said, why don't we split it 70-30? And I said, put her there. It was like a 1 minute. He's like, oh, dude, I thought you were totally going to go 75-25. Yeah, I would have given you 75-25. And I was like, whatever. I'm happy to play ball. I'm loyal. I've been here for a decade. You know, you seem like a good owner. The first day, I get to go back and tell Curtis we both just got a raise, and a pretty significant raise. It sounds like 10% going from 60 to 70. But it's not 10%. It's 60 divided by 70. No, 70 divided by 60. Is that how you do it? Yeah, it's 16%. It's almost 17%. So that's a significant raise. So we were on really good terms. Like, the first day that this guy took over, he gives us a 17% raise without having to raise the shop rates, right? Without passing that on to the client. just us as the technicians got a 17% raise, thanks to my skillful negotiating tactics. but it was great. So we were on really good terms with this guy for 2 years. But then he reopened after COVID, and he sits me down first day. And first of all, I'd been bugging him. I'd been texting him saying, let me know when you're going to reopen. Because before they closed, he told me we're going to close on Friday. And so because we were running a 1 week turnaround, we finished every single guitar. I didn't want a single client's guitar in that store, because who knows when it could have been Ebola. Like, people didn't know when the world was going to reopen at that time. It was all very confusing. And so I didn't want to be responsible for any of my clients' guitars. So we fixed every single job, and they were all gone, which meant the day we show up, I don't have any work. And because it's piecework, I'm not getting paid by the hour. I only get paid by the job. I don't want to sit there for 4 hours trying to get a 15-minute restring or whatever. And I can't pay Curtis to do that either. It's not fair. I mean, I can't afford that. And it's not fair to ask him to just sit there and work for free. So I texted this to the owner. I said, when you guys reopen after COVID, could you just send me the date? Let me know, and I'll run some ads. I'll do a promotion. I'll say free strings for the first 12 setups. You know, like, we'll get some people in the door so that we can generate some business the very first day, so that there's actually guitars to work on when Curtis and I show up. And he never did. Then the day before, he texted me, hey, we're open tomorrow at noon. I said, okay, I'll be there. I didn't want to tell Curtis to be there because I knew there was not a single guitar there. And so I show up, and first thing he does is says, we need to renegotiate this contract. I got to go back to 60-40. And I said, well, what? That's why you didn't tell me about the reopening? That's why I don't have a lineup of clients walking in through this door right now, is because you wanted to have a contract negotiation? First of all, if you would have let me know, I would have had numbers and like time to prepare for this. Second of all, no way. We've been working for the same shop rate, not paying you 30% for the last 3 months, and we're busier than shit. We're busier than we've ever been. So I'm happy to go back to the old rate, because again, I'm loyal. You gave us a raise 2 years ago. I'm happy to go back to the 70-30, but not a penny more. Because again, look at it from his perspective. If he's getting 30% and now asking for 40%, that's not 10%. That's 33% more money that he's trying to get out of us. So that's not insignificant. And I said, I'm just doing some napkin math, because again, I don't have any numbers in front of me because I'm ill prepared, but I'm just doing some napkin math. You want like $600, $800 more a month? Is that roughly what you need out of this room? And he said, yeah. And I said, okay. So we're on a really busy street. 50,000 cars a day drive past this location. We're right on McLeod Trail, at a set of lights, right on the corner. There's been one of those giant billboard neon signs for every other business in this mall. Not once in the 10 years have I worked here has that sign said, best guitar tech in the city. Same day setups, you know, whatever, lifetime warranty on guitar repair. Not once. What have you done to help us generate 12 more setups a month? Because that's not much. Like, I can get you $800 more a month if that's what you wanted. But that's how this conversation should have started. Is
oh my God, Steve, you're a rock star for being like surprised into a meeting to discuss your contract. Yeah. You're punching him right back.
Yeah. He thought we were sitting on our thumbs not working, but we had been busier than we had ever been, because all the music stores closed. We were the only place open. It was just, so yeah, he didn't have a leg to stand on. So I said, dude, we're happy to come back at the old rates, not a penny less, or say the word and I will empty this room. No big deal. Like, it's no harm, no foul. It's a handshake. It's like, I get it. It's business. You're a businessman. He was also the CEO of Behringer, TC Helicon. So it's like manufacturing company. So during the week, he wasn't even there running the business. He would fly to Vancouver to be the CEO of this company. And then this music, like mom and pop music store that he bought, was like his pet project kind of thing. And then he ended up sleeping with the secretary. It ruined his marriage. Like, it got really awkward. I was actually glad that we got out of there. Yeah, it's hilarious. Yeah, people are strange. People are very, very
They can be strange. They can be.
Yeah. Write this stuff. You can't even make this stuff up. Like,
that's wild. Yeah. That is wild. Okay, so you say you need an extra $600. What have you done for us to get us like the possibility?
Let's start generating sales. How do we generate more sales? He said, oh yeah, I don't know. Stuff's been tight. I'm trying to just squeeze from different spots and da-da-da. And I said, yeah, I get it. Stuff's tight everywhere. Everyone's in the same boat. But you're trying to squeeze blood from a stone. Like, let's make the pie bigger. Instead of you trying to take more of the pie, let's just make a bigger pie, you know? And he didn't really like that. And then there was a day, 2 weeks go by, and we were begrudgingly still there because he had begrudgingly shook my hand at the old deal. And 2 weeks go by, and Curtis texts me because I was working here with Tyler, and Curtis texts me, says, "Hey, I'm at the shop and nobody's here. So I've been waiting for 30 minutes. They still haven't opened the door." So I texted Tom, the owner, being like, "Hey, Curtis is at the shop. Door's not open. What's going on?" And he said, "Oh, I forgot to tell you. The salesman called in sick. We're closed today." And I said, "Okay, well, our guitars is going to pay Curtis for 2 hours minimum for driving, like for wait, because he could have booked a gig, he could have booked a lesson, he could have slept in, done whatever for his life. So I said, I'm going to pay him 2 hours, and that will be reflected on this month's invoice. We are billing you. You're paying Curtis for those 2 hours." And he said, "Oh no, I can't do that." And I said, "Well, it sounds like you don't respect Curtis's time." And he's like, "Well, no, it's not that. It's da 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 da." And I said, "It sounds like you don't. Are you going to pay Curtis for those 2 hours?" "No." It's like, "Okay, you've said the word. The shop will be empty tomorrow. What time are you open? Because I need the door open to empty the shop." He said, "We'll be there at noon." Perfect. We showed up at noon. I had 5 guys, 4 trucks, and by 12:45, it was like bare down to the drywall. Out of there. It was great. I even took this bench top. So I built this bench top when Curtis started working for me at the shop. It's just plywood, or not plywood, MDF. It's just 2 layers of MDF with some pine, but it was big enough to have 2 stations when we were at Music Center. So I just had to build this base, build it for this. And so, yeah, then we were working in here full time. It was crazy. It was our going independent, right? We weren't associated with the store. At first it was kind of scary, but then we started getting clients from other music stores because they didn't want to send us the complex. You get a broken headstock or a bridge lift on a vintage guitar. Maybe you don't want the kid at the music store, and they know that. They don't even want the liability of that doing damage to irreplaceable instruments. And so they would never send clients my way because I worked upstairs in their competition. They were afraid of walking out with a guitar or an amp. But now that we're independent, people call me all the time and say, "I'm at Long and McQuaid. I'm at Guitar Works. I'm at Music Center where you used to work. They tell me that you're not here anymore, but they gave me your number because their guy doesn't want to do this job, or they can't do it quick enough, or whatever." And so now we're not a competition. We're actually getting referrals from clients. And so we were looking to buy a commercial property to get it out of this garage because it just is messy. It's small. I want my wife wants to park in the garage. Where we live, it gets down to like -40 in the winter. So
I'm with your wife, by the way.
Yeah, and we have 3 young children, like under 5. So put in a cold car at -30 is, they've done it. They're Canadian based. Like, we've done it for the last 3 years. But my wife would like this garage back eventually. So this winter, she's going to get it back. I'll move some of this stuff around. But we were in negotiations for 8 months to buy this commercial property. And most people don't know how this works. And I didn't either. Like, I didn't go to school for business. I'm a college dropout. I just one semester of like philosophy and astronomy and a math course, a poetry course, and then realized college isn't the path for me. And I'm broke. I spent my life savings on one semester and have no money left. And now I need a job. And so I'm not a well-educated or well-read individual. So if you think that you can't do these things or some of the things that I've done, if I've done it, anybody can do it. So for example, we wanted to buy this commercial space. So we were kind of looking around, and then my wife from her hairdresser hears just down the street, a couple blocks away, that the lady who owns the women's consignment store is selling, or she had a deal fall through last summer. She was selling, and there's no sign. It's not on the market. They don't have a realtor. We just walked in and said, "Hey, we heard from the hairdresser that you were trying to sell last year. Are you still interested? We heard the deal fell through." She said, "Really?" "Yeah, totally. Obviously we got to talk and put some numbers together, but yeah, we're looking to retire. I'm in my 70s. My husband's health isn't doing so well. This deal fell through." Again, the commercial real estate stuff takes months and months and months. And so to have it like go through all these hoops and then finally fall through can be just like hard. They thought they were retiring. They thought they're going to sell their building. And so I said, "Okay, well, put together like some paperwork and a price, and I need to see like the inspection and stuff like that. And then I'll try and get the financing together because I don't have any money at all. I bought this house that is not worth what I paid for it. And I borrowed against my first house to use as the down payment. I didn't even have the money to buy this house. I used a home equity loan to get a down payment to get another. So it's like using debt to get debt.
Mm-hmm.
They don't teach you that in school, and it's quite risky.
But the bank's always pretty happy to give you more debt, right?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. And it's really risky if you think like being broke is bad. But like I grew up quite poor. And so the only risk to me is losing money, and that like nobody dies, nobody goes to jail. What's there to stress about? Like it's only money. Like, so what? We have to live in a small apartment and get another job. Like, it's fine. That's okay. If that's the risk, I'm willing to take that risk if the bank's going to give me money to buy a house, because you got to live somewhere. And so I didn't have any equity because I used the equity in my one house to buy the other house that now is worth less than I paid for it. So I have no equity. Even if I sell both houses, I don't have any money because I won't get what I paid for them. And now I have to find a way to get $1.4 million to buy this commercial space. That's what she wanted. So how the hell, like most people would say, oh, I can't afford it. And that's it. That's the end of the conversation. But if you think, how can I afford it? It starts a conversation. It starts a completely different conversation. And it might take a long time, but how long is a long time to get $1 million? Like people will work their whole lives for that. If it takes a month or a week or whatever, some sort of creative way. And so the way I did it is I wrote a business plan. Mm-hmm. I wrote a financial statement and a forward-looking business plan that I took to all these banks, and they all rejected me. They all said, no way, you don't have any money. You owe money on these houses that aren't worth what you paid for them. Like we're not giving you any more money. You're crazy. And so I had to go with like non-bank private lenders, which is a thing that I didn't even know existed. But it's kind of like the mafia. It's like in between banks and loan. The interest rates are way higher, like double or triple. At the time, interest rates were still like 2% at the banks. And so the mafia were up like 6%. But 6% still not that bad. Nowadays, the banks are offering like 7%. The mafia guys would be 12%, like I should have. But anyway, so we got the financing. It took a long time, and I got rejected a lot. I didn't get it from the first people I asked. But if you're persistent and I asked for, why did you reject me? What's wrong with my business plan? What didn't you like? How can I make this more appealing for the next person I show this to? And you learn every time, and you just don't give up. And eventually somebody says yes. And then we spent $10,000 to get the environmental assessment done. And it turns out it was an oil change place in the 70s. It was a gas station in the 60s. There's leaky tanks underground.
Oh, no.
It was across the street, and it's red flagged now for a phase 2 environmental report. And the phase 2 one is $45,000 and takes like 6 weeks because they got to drill core samples and water, and it's the same company that sells both of them. So I phoned them and I said, hey, we got red flagged with this phase 1, says we need a phase 2. Just level with me. Are you just trying to sell me a phase 2? Like, because you guys sell the phase 2 and it's triple the price, quadruple the price. Or does it actually need it? And she said, oh no, like 99% of phase 1s don't go to phase 2. We don't, like, if it gets red flagged for a phase 2, that means there's something down there, and it's going to cost way more than 40 grand for us to look at it. Like if you're to remediate it, you're talking millions of dollars. So in hindsight, like that's the best $10,000 I ever spent and then the financing fell through. The bank says, oh, you got an environmental red flag? Well, we want to see the phase 2. So I report to her, and this has been like 9 months now of negotiating with this lady who wouldn't pay for it, even though it's her property. And the information is hers to keep. So now she has the phase 1 that I paid for. And now I know why she didn't pay for it, because she knew the whole time. And no banks will finance it now because it's an environmental disaster. No private will finance it now until you get to phase 2 and possibly remediate it. So now she's stuck with it because it's been red flagged, unless somebody's paying in cash or seller financing, which is a thing that, again, I didn't know. You can approach a seller of a building and they can lend you the mortgage of it. That's a way. Like 40% of commercial real estate deals are done off the market sales, just like that, walking in, and the seller finances it. So you don't even need your own money to do some of these deals. if you can get creative about the way you approach the financing. So anyway, that fell through, and my neighbor died in this process, and we have been looking after this house next door. So I'm going to flip this. I'll walk you guys over here. So I live here in this greenhouse, and these are both 1912. They're 120-year-old houses. This house, this guy died, and we had been going over there to shovel the walk and check on the pipes for the insurance company. His sister lived on a farm out of town. And I said to my wife, I said, what if we just put an offer in on this house? I got the business plan dialed. We'll get the financing, no problem. And because it's not commercial, we don't have to do an environmental inspection. This has never been a gas station or whatever. And it didn't look like this when I got it. It needed a huge renovation, like 60 grand. Like we painted it, new roof, new gutters, new electrical, new floors. But again, the bank gave me the money. I don't have any money. I borrowed that money, put it on the mortgage at 2% or whatever it was at the time, and paid contractors to do it all. I didn't do any of the work. I mean, I built the bench, some of the stuff, but I'm not doing floors. I'm not doing a roof. I'm not doing gutters. I'm not putting an electrical panel in. And so, yeah, that's this. And so after the reno, it's still a work in progress. There's piles of junk in every corner. It's not completely organized, but this is where we work now, and it's amazing. So we have the dirty room over here where we do all the grinding, fret work, nuts and saddles. We've got dust collection on 2 belt sanders. So we do nuts and saddles and double dust collection. We got the big one and the vacuum hose. Try and keep the bone dust to a minimum. And then these things, if you guys grind frets, and we'll get more into this when we talk about like the shop rates and stuff, but these Fordham style, this one's an Amazon one. I think it's only like $200 because the Fordham ones are like $500. Mm-hmm. They're really, it's maybe 600 now. I got this one a long time ago. That one hasn't died yet, but all of these little guys, we used to use like these Dremel style ones, and they only last like 6 months because we blast a lot of frets with them. So eventually I just caved and bought the expensive like Fordham style ones, and they haven't died yet. I've gone through like 5 or 6 of those Dremels. And so basically how we run it is once your frets are all polished and shiny, and we do that with every setup. We do a level and a polish and do the fret edges and stuff. Then the guitars come out here just to get like strings in a setup, basically. So we've got 3 spots out here, and they've all got the basic setup tools within arm's length, soldering iron, 2 soldering irons between the 3 benches. It's rare that 3 people need to use the soldering iron all at once. But that way this room stays relatively clean. So when the clients come in, it's clean and tidy, which is, in my market, very uncommon. Every other guitar shop in Calgary is disgustingly filthy, including my own that was in the garage. It was just dirty. And then so this, we do like glue ups and projects that that have to sit in clamps for a while, or do multi-stage crack repairs or stuff. That happens in this room here. And there's the outtake pile. So all these need to get picked up and paid for. And then this, I keep the intake pile in the bathroom. And this is basically, I'm booked till about Tuesday. We're booking Wednesday. So this is tomorrow and Tuesday's work. And I'll book Wednesday and Thursday probably tomorrow. Like we only have maybe 20 or so guitars. Like this is all my work I'm going to do. These 2 are gluing up. So there's not much, once we get more than that, I literally don't have the space. Like they're already out of the rack, they're overflowing onto the floor. So I just don't like that. I'd rather just do all the work and then tell people to come on Friday when we're a little bit empty. And then the most recent addition has been this, which is a sales room. So I just built this last week. And I got the idea, I was in Toronto a couple weeks ago, and they had these 2x4s with the eye hooks, and they just hung the guitars by strings. And I thought it was such a cool way to save space. And so instead of using 2x4s, I used like walnut and mahogany and cherry and stuff to make it look a little nicer. It's a guitar shop. I wanted it to look cleaner. And so that's our little, I think we have 40 hooks or so.
So these are consignment? These are repaired and selling?
So I don't do consignment because I like to do research and like speak to other people about um, what works and what doesn't. And there's another shop in our city, and they do a ton of consignment. So they have like 100 guitars on consignment in a part of their repair business. And I talked to the guy there, and he said if I was to do this again, I would never ever take any guitars on consignment. And the reason he says that is because um, first of all, the clients are always calling saying, "Where's my money? I want my money. Is my guitar sold? My guitar sold." Second of all, if something's wrong, let's say they plug it in and one of the pickups goes, well, who fixes that? Who pays for that repair? Does the client pay for it because he still owns the guitar? Does the repair shop pay for it, or and then put it on the bill so that the customer? It's like just a conversation. What if somebody wants to haggle? They want to haggle over $200 on a $3,000 guitar. Now do I have to phone the guy and talk? Like now I'm just being a middleman. So I just decided to not take any consignment guitars. I'll just buy guitars and then we can fix them up. I can pay someone to set them up and then just put them on the wall and sell them. However, to start the sales room, a friend of mine, he's a guitar salesman in the city here, and he said he's dealing with an estate. A client of his passed away, and he's had he said he already sold $80,000 worth of guitars, and some of them were vintage, Ellie's, 60s Strats, and so now he's down to and he sold all the popular ones, so the 335s and the Les Pauls and stuff like that. And so some of the guitars that you saw in that back room there are part of that estate. And I said I would do it for him and only him. Don't tell people that I'm doing consignment. But because he's basically filling up half the room for me right off the bat, it makes it look like the sales room is open and ready to go. I said I would do it for him, and we're only taking 10% because it's so many guitars and kind of a sad situation where typically with consignment, you're looking at more 20 to 30%. That's where I've called around. That's where most stores in our area charge.
Yeah.
And that's sort of what I want to make when I buy a guitar. And I tell that to the clients. If they want to sell me a guitar, I had a guy in here last week with a Music Man. I said, what do you want to get on? He said, I want $1,400. I said, well, I want to sell it for $1,400. So I can only give you $1,100. And we settled at $1,150, and I'm going to sell it. I'm going to mark it for $1,350. Make my 20 points. So you just be honest with people and then let them know, because then you get your money right now. You get your money today. You don't have to worry about calling me every 6 weeks saying, did my guitar sell?
Yes. Yeah.
So that's the story. If anybody has any questions, I had a few, like I said, more boring financial, what did I have written down here? Tax structure. Setting your shop rate, value versus cost, the 80-20 rule, and inflation. Those are the points I have a little 2 minutes about each one.
You also mentioned to me about wanting to tell Luths about getting a will and personal directive and power of attorney. So I know that's not specifically businessy stuff, but it is Luth stuff. Tell us about that.
Applies to anyone. If you're not, it doesn't matter what you're in, you need to get a will and a power of directive, or a personal directive is what they call it here for medical decisions. So if you're incapacitated, who makes the medical decisions for you? And a power of attorney is the money side. Is if you're incapacitated, who can control the bank account? Who pays your bills? How does the mortgage get paid? How does the rent get paid if you all of a sudden don't have control over your accounts? Sure, the money might be in there, but if nobody has the control to send it, to pay off the credit card or whatever, you're going to be in a world of hurt. Or not you, your loved ones, right? The people are going to already be having the hardest time of their lives dealing with your loss, are then going to have an even harder time dealing with this, pardon my French, but bullshit that you should have planned for before you, now. If you haven't planned for it, plan for it now. Tomorrow, call the lawyer. It's $800, I think we paid for all, and ours is quite complicated. We have children. I have another property, a business, so it'll probably be cheaper than that for most people. And that was for all three of them. That was for the will, the power of attorney, and the personal directive. You're doing it for your loved ones. That's who it's for. It's for the people who are going to be the saddest when, so they're not burdened even more with financial stress. They're already stressed out enough.
Right. Okay. So this is
And
your
then
message.
compounding
Get your will figured out.
is
now.
life insurance. Compounded with
Life
that is even a minimal policy. Like $20,000 of life insurance is like $10 a month. Like you spend more than that on a beer at a bar. One beer is more than $10 at some places, you know. And so, and the reason I say this is I've seen too many of my clients, and even a fellow luthier in Calgary died recently, very suddenly, very, very suddenly. And his wife is selling all his tools and guitars to pay for the funeral because he could spend $10 a month on life insurance and have his priority or his affairs in order, whatever you want to call it. You know, it's like, it's just a responsible thing to do as an adult. If you have loved ones, if you care, if there's people who care about you and you care about how they are going to be after you die, spend $10 a month and buy some life insurance, or 20, you know, like it's not expensive. And just to cover, you don't have to get $100,000 or $1 million. Like you don't have to get these grandiose, huge policies. You can just get the bare bones, buy me a coffin, pay the taxes because the government wants their piece of the pie as soon as you die, you know. And that I can get more into like tax strategy and stuff if you guys are interested.
I want to know how you arranged your finances to convince yourself that you could hire on more staff than just yourself. How did you work out those numbers?
Well, you have to look at it from the opposite way, because you're looking at it from you have to pay the staff. Like it costs you money, right, to have staff. What I look at it is if I have every more staff member I have is one more guitar per hour we can fix. So the shop rate, I can only bill 1 hour of shop rate in 1 hour. If there's 2 of us, I can bill twice the shop rate. If there's 3 of us, I can bill triple the shop rate. And it just scales. So the staff don't cost you money at all. They should be making you money, and you should be paying them fairly for their skills. Mm-hmm. Like my newest staff member, Catherine, I won't say the shop, but she moved here from Edmonton. Actually, you might know her, Nathan. Or was it Nathan, the guy from Edmonton?
Yeah, I don't know if Nate McMurdo is still with us.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah, you may have run into her or whatever in the Edmonton scene. Her name's Catherine Robertson, and she worked at like all the music stores up there. She's been a tech for 10 years. So she sent me a resume when she moved to Calgary. Sent me an email saying, hey, I'm just looking for a job as a repair tech. I've specialized in violins, but I've also worked in guitar stores for a decade and done fret jobs. I can do bridge re-glues. I make nuts and saddles, stuff like that. So I said, sure, why don't you come for an interview? I'll buy you lunch. We'll have like a talk about numbers and expectations. And I didn't know if she wanted full-time or part-time, or I just want to see if it jives too, like the personalities. So I bought her lunch and she said, yeah, I got an offer actually before you at one of the other shops in town. And there's only like 3 or 4 other shops. And that he offered me minimum wage. He offered me $15 an hour. Minimum wage here is 15 Canadian, which is probably like 11 American. She said he offered me minimum wage and said, if I'm good, the rates can go up to $20 an hour. And she's like, I was so mad, I was shaking. I wanted to spit in his face. Yeah, it's like, yeah. So I'll start you at double that. How about I start you at $40 an hour and see how it goes? And within 2 shifts, I gave her a raise to $50 an hour because I could see how skilled she was. And then I always give my staff a raise every year. There was 1 year, I think, during COVID where we didn't get a raise. But every year prior to that, everybody gets a raise. That, other than last year, beats inflation, because otherwise it's not a raise. If it's not beating inflation, it's not technically a raise.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah. And that also goes for the shop rates, right? Like, how do you set your shop rates? Obviously, if you're first starting out, just call around. Call all the other shops and just set them competitively. That way, when clients call around, they can get the same answer. When they say, how much is a setup? Oh, it's the same price. This guy, same price. This guy. But how do you then raise your rates? Like, how do you guys decide when it's time and by how much to raise your rates? And or do you ever? Like, some people I've talked to have never raised their rates ever, never in like 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
To me is insane because your money only goes 50% as far in 10 years.
Yeah. So you just called around to set your rate? That you must have done more than that.
Yeah, I was lucky enough that I just inherited the shop rate from the music store. So where I was training, their shop rate was $80 an hour because he was like the best in the city. But the music store was $60 an hour. And then I was talking to my dad about this. I said, I got to raise the rates. And once I'm really good, after 5 years, I'll raise them to $70 an hour. And he's like, no, you can't do that. I was like, what do you mean? He's like, well, people are going to notice. What you have to do is you have to raise your rates incrementally every year. So right now you're charging 60, raise it to 68. And then nobody's going to notice, right? Nobody's going to, if you're already spending $60 plus a pack of strings plus tax, it's going to be more than 68 anyways. So the difference between 60 and 68 is not, people aren't going to notice that. But if you go from 60 to 80, people might notice that. And so I really took that to heart. And every year we raise the rates, or every 2 years sometimes, but religiously. And it's like by 4 or 6 or 8. Over the last couple of years, I've had to raise it by $12 an hour, just because inflation is getting insane. But if you do it consistently and regularly at a small incremental level, it's not so scary to go from like 80 to 100 as it is to go from 80 to 84 to 88 to 96 to 104. You know, like if you do it over those every year for 5 or 6 years, it's a lot less scary than working really hard for 5 years to try and get these skills and this reputation and then raise your rates by 20% or 30%. People notice that, right? People are going to really notice that. Where what I've noticed, and it's imposter syndrome. Like I had it when we went to $100 an hour. I didn't even want to hit it. I was at $96 an hour, and I waited a year because I was so psychologically afraid of raising the rate to that triple digit, 100. It's like this psychological barrier. I thought nobody will ever pay $100 an hour for guitar repairs. I'm going to lose all my business, even though with tax, it was already 96 plus tax is $101 or whatever an hour. And so what I did is I waited 2 years, and then I raised it from 96 to 104. And so it wasn't like psychologically.
You jumped over that psychological barrier threshold.
Yeah. But I had friends, I had colleagues telling me, no, you can't charge. Nobody's going to pay $100 an hour for guitar repair. And now that was like probably 4 years ago. We're charging $156 an hour. And the last time I raised the rate, it was 12. I think we were charging 144. And then we went to 156. Nobody said a thing. Okay. Not one comment. I didn't get a single comment. And even from clients who had been here recently and still have invoices from last year with the old price on it, in their case, not a single mention of it.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, my wife said.
She's documenting you.
Yeah.
Make sure you remember to thank her for all her good advice.
Oh, I do. Every day. Yeah. But so it's not as scary. Like it's more scary for me. I found it more scary myself psychologically. And so how I do it now is I have to make it easy for me because I still don't like it. I still feel uncomfortable. I still feel like I'm not worth it. Nobody will pay the next raise is going to be $168 an hour. Mm-hmm. My mind still says nobody's going to pay that for guitar repairs. But you have to consider price versus value, right? Value isn't price. Price is what you pay. Value is what you get. And so obviously most people have heard the analogy of the water bottle. Water bottle at home is free. A water bottle at the gym is $2. A water bottle at the airport is $5. If you're thirsty in the desert after walking for 2 weeks, you'd pay 10 grand for that same water bottle. It's the same thing, right? The product is the same, but the value changes drastically for people depending on who wants it. The water bottle thing?
Maybe price versus value. Start at
Oh,
price versus value.
Value. Price is what you pay. Value is what you get. And so sometimes they're correlated. Sometimes more expensive means better quality. But in what we do, what I tell all of my staff too is nobody is better than anybody else at setting up a guitar. A guitar setup is just specs. It's action, it's intonation. It either plays in tune or it doesn't. There's no voodoo dust fairy magic. I'm gonna do this over your guitar and now all of a sudden my setup plays better than anybody else's. No, it's attention to detail. There's specifications, and then in my experience, what I've learned, it's listening to the client. So we have a spec for all our setups. If nobody says anything, we just set them up like the pros want it. I get these specs from professional touring artists. So they're super picky sometimes, and once we finally dial it in so it's perfect for them, I just measure it, and everybody gets the Matty McKay spec for electric guitars, or the Aaron Young spec for acoustic guitars.
Yeah.
And so in less than, like I had a client last week, he came in, played the guitar, he said, wow, this is actually really low. And I said, well, it's like our spec. We could even go lower if you want. It's not like the heavy metal guy spec, the shredder. We can go lower than that if you want. He said, no, I kind of want it higher. Like it's kind of buzzing when I play the bass string hard. And I said, sure, no problem. And I said, what are you using this for? He's like, well, I got a show. It's my first show on electric guitar. I primarily play acoustic. And I said, oh, okay. Why don't we set this up to our acoustic spec? And so for all the luthiers, our electric spec is 50 to 60 thousandths at fret 12. And then our acoustic spec is 70 to 80 thousandths at fret 12. Like just a hair high, 20,000.
Are you a fretting at the first fret to get that measurement kind of shop?
Nope.
Or are you open string?
Open, yeah, no fretting. Yeah, that's just the height, the action from the open string to fret 12. Yeah, and so that's like our ballpark spec. We can go a little bit lower if you have a light touch, or if you're playing through triple rectifier, super distortion, all legato stuff. We have a lot of guys who don't care about buzzing. They just want it to be as low as it goes. And this guy, he thinks that, and he's playing as if it's an acoustic guitar. He's still hitting it really hard, because that's how you have to get volume out of acoustic guitars, where electric guitars, you could just turn your amp up and play super soft and it's really loud.
Yeah, but if he's coming at the electric guitar with acoustic style and his gigs tonight, it's not like he's going to retrain himself today.
No, and that's not what it's about. I don't want him to have to retrain himself. I don't want him to love the way I set up my own guitar. I actually set mine a 10 thou higher than our electric spec, because I like a little bit higher action on my telly. 80 thou to 70 thou. I just find it's a little cleaner. The bends are better. But that's just me. Again, I don't expect anybody to like the guitars like I like them. You really want to listen to the clients and let them tell you how they like them. And sometimes, like, we offer a lifetime warranty on our setups. So what that means is if you get a guitar set up here, you can take it home, bring it back the next day, and we'll adjust it. You can bring it back the next week, and we'll adjust it. You can bring it back twice a year forever, for the rest of your life, and we'll adjust it, and it's free. And some guitars, like especially in a cold climate, like our city goes from -40 to like +30 throughout the year. And we have these things in the winter called Chinooks, where it's like, it'll be -25 for 2 weeks, snowing, a foot of snow, and then a Chinook blows in and it's +15 and all the snow melts for like a week. It feels like springtime, and it's middle of February, the humidity shoots up, and then it's -20 for another 3 weeks. And so guitars don't like that. Guitars move a lot in Calgary. And the sort of scam in our industry is that they want to charge you $100 every time they touch your guitar. Where the way we run it is, you pay us for an hour, we're going to level all your frets, we're going to do the fret edges, the sprout. Mm-hmm. And I even warranty that. If in the middle of February, when it's -40, you can feel those frets sprouting again, just bring it back. It'll take us like 15 minutes to kiss that little bit off. And then we'll never have to do it again if you brought it in the middle of winter. Right. But it's free. You don't have to pay to have that done every single time. I'd rather do your next guitar, or your brother's guitar, or your bass player's bass. Or, like, I'm happy to do those little, takes 10 minutes. If it takes me longer to write the invoice and like bill you for it than it does to do the work, I'm just not going to bill you for it, basically.
So you're gonna take the guitar in for the first time you meet it. You're gonna do the fret level, fret dress, fret crown, fret ends, set up. Charge them $156 because you guys are wicked fast and you can get that done in under an hour. You're gonna and that work is warranted for ever.
Yeah.
Till the next time, like.
Until
That sounds like an insane deal. So when do they have to pay for the next service?
If we have to re-crown your frets, so like in a decade, or actually I have some clients who it has to be done every year because they play so much. But most people, if you have more than one guitar, it'll probably be 5 to 10 years before we have to re-crown your frets again. And then we'll charge a little extra. Like once in a while we get guitars, like we had a Telly in here last week that had never been leveled and re-crowned, and the guy played it like he was a jazz guy, and so there was fret wear all the way up the neck. Every key, all the way to fret 15. The frets were like flat, like typically what you'd see on frets 1, 2, and 3, but all the way up to fret 15. And so we charged them an extra half hour to just put in the time to get them nice and round. But yeah, until he does that again. So for him, it might be 2 years. For the average person, it might be 5 years. For the guy who has 20 guitars, he'll never have to get them recrowned again because you're not going to play the one guitar enough to wear it out if you have so many.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, basically until we have to do fret work again, we do like all the stuff that the other shops charge for in like a setup. So truss rod, action, pickup heights, and intonation, we do for free. And even if you don't pay us for a setup, like once in a while we'll get like Walmart guitars or GWLs, you know, like the Costco, the $99 comes with the DVD and the strap and the case and the picks, and they come in and they're like, oh, it's $160 for a setup, but I only paid $99 for the guitar. It's like, well, I'll do the truss rod adjustment, and if you need to grind the saddle or take a shim out or put a shim under the saddle, it's like that takes 10 minutes. Like, I'm not going to charge you. If I have to do the fret edges, we'll charge you a half hour, you know, to grind fret edges, if that's all you want. But the basic setup stuff, I don't know. There's enough other work to charge people for. I'd rather not nickel and dime, and I'd rather not do 15-minute jobs and then have to write an invoice for it.
Right. As you said, if it takes you shorter time to do the work than write the invoice.
Yeah. I'd rather do the work, shake your hand, and then they leave really happy and they tell their friends they have a great experience. It's also because you're building trust. I find in this industry, you're selling trust first. Before you're selling the service that you're selling, whatever it is, they have to trust that, number one, that's what's going to fix their problem. Like you can actually solve the problem that they have. And number two, you're going to charge a fair amount and you're not overcharging. Like mechanics, like shady mechanics is a common thing. You know, people who don't know much about cars, they bring their car in for an oil change and they say, oh, it needs the flux capacitor and the blinker fluid changed. And okay, you know, it's like there's people like that in this industry and it gives us all a bad name. So I'd rather do the opposite. Because we also, I purposely, like my marketing strategy, other than this and a little bit of Instagram, is absolutely nothing. I want us to be hard to find. There's no sign on the door. I don't pay for sponsored Google pages or Kijiji or Instagram posts or anything like that. I only rely on word of mouth that the work will sell itself. And again, that takes years. It takes 15 years. But like we get 10 guitars a day, 12 guitars a day, every single day. And I don't have to advertise at all because the work advertises itself. You know,
that's amazing. So you put in the work for the one client, and then he's going to go and tell his buddies.
He'll tell his bandmate. He'll say, "Dude, play this guitar," and his bandmate will go, "Whoa, this is amazing! Where did you get this done? How long did it take, and how much?"
Yeah.
You know, because I take my guitars here, and so because we're hard to find, we often get clients who've had problems elsewhere. So people who've gone to the big box stores and they get the free setup. You know, if they buy a brand new custom shop, you know, $7,000, $8,000, $10,000 guitar, and then they get the free setup and it's worse than when they brought it in. Or we get people who they're just, I don't know what goes on because I'm not there, but it sounds to me from what they're telling me is that the other techs aren't listening to their problems. They're trying to say, oh no, it's your playing style. Anyone will make a guitar buzz if you play it like that. You know, sounds like you need some lessons kind of attitude instead of, maybe I'm not understanding the problem correctly. Can you show me again where it's happening? Maybe we can approach it from a different angle. And so usually when people come to us, they've already had bad experiences at guitar shops or music stores. And typically, like, my policy is if I can't fix it, we don't charge you for it either. Like, if you're not happy, if you don't think that what we did is worth the $160, you don't have to pay for it. It's free. You can have your guitar. I'm not going to warranty it. You know, don't come back. Go somewhere else. But
we're not a good fit.
Yeah, I don't want your money. I don't want your money. If you're already upset at me, I definitely don't want you to be upset at me and have taken your money. Because I hear those stories on a weekly basis. I see guitars that people bring me that say, I paid to have X and Y done, and X and Y are still broken or buzzing or whatever. And I was like, but they charged you for it? Like, they didn't fix it and they charged you for it? That's just shady. It's like, I'm going to have to charge you again because you're going to have to pay twice for it. But if I don't fix it, I won't charge you. I want people to have a good relationship with their guitar tech. And I want to kind of bring a level of professionalism and accountability to an industry that, I mean, let's not kid ourselves. Anybody can watch a YouTube video and put up a sign and a Kijiji ad, and now they're a guitar tech. You know, there's no red seal, right? There's no journeyman ticket. There's no level of accreditation for the client to see that you're competent at what you're doing. And there's a lot of shisty, like, salesman-y, you know, shady tactics people use, especially because in my experience, the client often doesn't know what the problem is. They bring a guitar in and say it's buzzy, but they don't know if it's because there's not enough relief, there's too much relief, the action's too low, it could be high frets, it could be a loose brace, it could be a loose pickup spring, you know. Like, I had a Frank Brothers guitar in here. Again, the guy brought it to 2 other shops before he brought it here. Then found us on, like, Reddit or something. He was, like, trying to find guitar techs in Calgary, and it's like an $8,000, $9,000 guitar. Like, it's brand new. It's a year old. These are top of the line, amazing quality guitars. Shout out to Soda, who works there
from
Soda,
Toronto.
Yeah, from Toronto, and
Yeah.
Soda's from Calgary. He works in there.
Oh, is he from Calgary?
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
And I've seen actually some of the guitars he's built from clients. Like, they bring them to me now to set up and adjust stuff, and they're really nice. He makes some killer guitars. Watch out for that guy.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was none of the fretwork. It wasn't the setup. What it ended up being was the pickup spring holding the humbucker in was shorter than the screw.
Mm-hmm.
Neck humbucker had been lowered on the bass side, lower than the length of that spring, and on a certain note, only on the G string, like on the D note on fret 7, it would make this weird rattle, this weird hum, and nobody could find this problem. Like, he had the frets leveled twice, and every screw tightened, and it's like, and I told him, I said, dude, if I can find it, I'll charge you for it, but this is weird. Like, I've seen 30,000 guitars, and I don't know. I'm going to be honest with you, I don't know what the problem is. I'm not going to try and sell you on something that you know at all. I'm going to tell you the truth, and I don't know what's causing this rattle. I'm going to try and figure it out. Give me a day. I'll call you tomorrow with it. If I can't, I won't charge you for it. But we figured it out. Yeah, that's what it was. It was the humbucker screw was just a hair shorter, or the spring was shorter than the screw.
Okay, totally noted. That's one of the things I'm going to check now. It's like one of the things I'll put on my weird rattle checklist.
Oh,
yeah.
The other, we used to sell these guitars with the brand Vintage.
Yeah.
I don't know. You know, they're like SGs and Les Pauls and Strats style guitars. They're cheap, Chinese made, you know, under $1,000, but they were all relics, like, from the factory. And those guitars had these green tulip Gibson style tuners, green tulips, always loose and rattling. And when we sold them at the store, I don't know how many came back with this weird buzzing. And after I figured it out that it was this button, and all you had to do was just wick a little thin CA glue, like a drop of thin CA glue in there, and it was fine. But the first one took me like 3 hours to figure out what was causing that buzz.
Oh man, it's impressive. You're impressive. What you've built is impressive. The vision you have for just like building the trust to keep the clientele growing is awesome. But I'm still not clear on how you are such a good businessman. Like, what are some business? Let's get into some gritty. What are some taxi stuff we need to know so that we can develop?
Yeah, let me grab my list here.
Oh, there's a list?
Well, I just made a little list of stuff I wanted to mention. Yeah. But honestly, I wasn't a great businessman. It took 15 years. And I ran a guitar business, a guitar teaching business into the ground. Like full-time load of students. Had I been a businessman back then, I would have hired teachers to just take that student load off my hands. And I would have had another successful business already running in the background that requires like 2 hours a month that I could also hire someone to do, sort of thing. But I wasn't business minded, and I had to read books and talk to professionals. Like the beauty of this industry is you get to meet people of all walks of life. Like I serve homeless people all the way to the owner of the Ferrari dealership in town is a client of mine, and professional artists to struggling musicians. Touring artists like stadium tours, 100-date summer-long tours, to the guy playing the neighborhood pub, on a Tuesday night kind of thing for Pitt. And so I get to meet a lot of interesting people from a lot of different walks of life. And I always try and ask a couple questions. I try and learn something from my clients. And especially throughout the COVID and how like uncertain it was, I was really trying to gauge, because I have doctors who are clients, professors at university, epidemiologists, virologists type people. So it's like we would sit and talk for like half an hour about the stuff that was going on and how they thought about it, what they were doing. And I had clients who were like driving their lifted $100,000 pickup truck with the dually diesel pipes, being like, as soon as I'm picking up these guitars, I'm grabbing my guns and heading to the bush, and you'll never see me again. Like I had all types of people coming in, and so I talk to people. I try and talk to, like, the tax strategist that I hired is a client of mine. He called me one day and said, hey, I work for this company. We do accounting and bookkeeping. You run a small business. How's your books? And I was like, they're terrible. I put all my receipts in a shoebox, and at the end of the year, my wife and I make a drinking game out of doing our books for the whole year, counting the receipts, and and it's like an 8-hour ordeal. Like, it's terrible. It's a terrible situation. My books are not done. And he said, okay, cool. How's your accounting? It's like, also terrible. They don't like me because I'm late, disorganized. And he's like, well, let me actually tell you who I work for. And it's like this tax strategy company where the first thing they told me is you need to incorporate. And I said, why? He says, well, because right now you're a sole proprietor. And so what that means is all of the business profits get taxed as income. And so in Canada, I don't know about where you guys are, but our personal income tax is like 30% minimum. If you start making real money, it's like 40%, goes up to 50%. And so he said to me, what you need to do is incorporate the business, because business profits are only taxed at 8 to 11%, depending on, what province you're in and who's in power and whatever. But so what you do is you pay yourself a salary from the corporation or a dividend or something, just enough to pay your bills, just enough to pay the mortgage, and stuff like that. And then you keep the rest in the business and declare it as profits. And you're going to save, that's $10,000, $20,000, $30,000 a year right there, just right away, just by the way you structure your business. That's like $2,000 to $4,000 a month that you're not paying in taxes. Wow. Instant. Wow. It's like that covers their costs. Like, their services aren't cheap. It's about $600 a month for their, and that includes your tax preparation, your corporate filings, accounting, audits, get audited by the government. So yeah, their services aren't cheap, but the first thing they told me to do paid me double what it's costing me to hire them. Which is insane. Yeah, it's like, that's insane. Because I'm not business minded. I've had to learn all this stuff the hard way and the slow way. I never thought about incorporating and the tax implications thereof. I just paid way too much money to the government last year in taxes and bit my tongue about it. It's like, that's just the cost of living in civilized society, right? Whatever people say. But no, apparently, if you just hire people, they can, and it's all legal. Like, this is how everybody runs and structures their businesses. But you have to be making, more than, say, $60K a year. If you're making less than $60K a year, don't spend $600 a month on accounting. Like, that doesn't make any sense. But once your revenues start getting higher and your tax obligations start becoming nauseating, well, considering it's like they just don't do anything. I would be a much more grateful taxpayer if all the natives had drinking water on the reserves, right? How come we still have hundreds of reserves with boil water advisories?
Yes.
How come there's still homeless people on the streets? The veterans can't get housing. Like, there's so many things the government could be spending money, my tax money on, and they just, for some reason, are choosing not to. So it's like, when they start spending the money in a more responsible manner, I'll be much happier paying it to them. But right now, when it's on corporate subsidies and bombs, I'm going to give them the absolute least I can, legally speaking.
Yeah. And the way you frame it, I usually don't like hearing about how the corporate tax percentage is so much less than the everyman's. But when you yourself can work it so that you can continue to grow a system that supports luthiers and musicians in your neighborhood, oh man, it feels so good.
Well, you asked how could hiring staff, how could you guarantee them the income or something? But right there, that's a part-time staff member right there. By restructuring the business in a certain way, now you've got a budget for like someone to even just answer the phones and do the emails or something like that.
Wow.
Like, it's totally different. And the reason they do it, like the reason the government gives corporations a huge tax break compared to individuals, is because the corporations are doing something that the government can't, and that's creating jobs.
Yeah,
right?
I see.
Jobs because they want taxpayers. The government wants tax money because it doesn't have any money. Last time I checked, all the governments are broke everywhere, in every country. So they need income from us, the taxpayers. And the only way they can get that is if somebody creates jobs that then will pay tax on it.
Yeah.
So unfortunately, that's just the way it's structured. And when you move to a different country, like, you can't change the system. You can't. I mean, I guess you could go all cash and try and do it under the table, but then good luck getting financing. Good luck trying to go to the bank with your business plan if you don't have any income on the books, right?
You already worked for a guy who was doing that, and he was living in his shop, so that doesn't really seem like a step up.
And the reason my business plan got me financing is because I declared all of my income, even the cash, and paid tax on it. Like, you have to.
Yeah.
You have to play by the rules, unfortunately. And I mean, if you're paying taxes, you're making money. Like, that's the name of the game. Whether it's income tax or capital gains tax or property tax or whatever, it's like, if you're paying taxes, you're in the percentage of people who's making money. So you shouldn't be too grumbly about it.
Mm-hmm. What else you got for us?
The other things I had was, setting the shop rate. We did that. Value versus cost. We did value versus cost. The only thing I want to mention on that is when you're looking at a business, you can offer whatever you offer. You can pick 2 out of the 3: good, fast, and cheap.
Yeah. I love that triangle.
Yeah, good, fast, and cheap. Pick 2. You cannot do 3. You can't be good and cheap and fast.
Right.
Because what is, if you're good and cheap, like, that's how I was when I first started at $60 an hour, then the timeline starts blowing out. When I was first starting this, we were cheaper than the other guys in town. I was doing work, and then we were 2, 3, 4 weeks behind. I was starting to see myself getting into the same problem that Miles had. And I didn't want that. And so we have to start raising the rates. I want to be fast and I want to be good. It means you can't be cheap.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you have to dissuade, because otherwise you'd be too busy. You just get too busy. That's the problem with this industry, is as soon as you get good, as soon as word gets out that there's a decent, skilled guitar repair person around within 100 miles, you get busy. Word spreads. Musicians hang out with each other and have had poor experiences at other shops. And so as soon as they find someone who's reasonable to deal with, who charges an honest, admires their, or follows their quotes, they don't charge more. That's another thing I never do, is if we're halfway through a job and then I find, oh shit, something else came up, I'm never going to call the client and say, we need another hour, because it's almost like you have them hostage. The guitar's on the bench, it's in pieces. If you want me to put your guitar back together, it's going to cost you more. It's like, I don't want to, no way. I'm going to fix it, eat that. That's on me, because I didn't do a proper quote. I should have caught that when I did the quote. You gave me it, we got it in triplicate, right? I had the chance to do a proper quote. That's my job, is to do a proper quote. If I didn't do my job correctly, that's not the client's fault. They don't get charged for that. They get a free repair, and then I'll mention it. I'll say, hey, we found this pickup was out of phase when we were doing your guitar. I didn't even plug it in when you brought it in for a quote and check. That's, again, my fault. We fixed it for you. No problem, no charge. And they're so thrilled. They're so happy, because, again, it's that trust thing, right? That you're going to pay the price that was agreed upon. And if we find something else, we're not going to nickel and dime you over little things. We're just going to fix it. Your guitar's in good hands. You're going to get it back better than when it left, kind of thing. Sometimes you have to eat it. Like, sometimes there's certain jobs where you just eat the hours, and it is what it is. Like, there's no avoiding that in this industry. You have to eat some hours. Like,
hey, I want to put you on the spot here. Would you be willing to share a copy of your intake sheet with us? Like,
sure.
That we could share, like, as a link later too.
Sure. So I just buy them at Staples.
Yeah.
The order's triplicate, and so I write them out here.
Yeah.
The client gets the white copy after I rip it off, and then this is what ours looks like. It says their name. Maybe you want to blur that out, and the phone number, and then this says set up with 10 to 48 lefty swap. So that means this acoustic guitar is getting the nut slots filled and recut to be strung left-handed, and then a set of strings, and then tax. Yeah. And then that's what the client pays. Okay. And unless we're building a nut, I don't charge. Again, that's like 5 minutes to fill the nut slots and cut them. I'm not going to charge you, extra time to do simple stuff like that.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. That's pretty simple. So it's on the person intaking the guitar to think of everything and make sure they've got it all down.
Well, mostly, so how we do it is we ask the clients. So I never assume. I never open a guitar and go, oh, this needs a setup, like some people do. Like, I never assume anything. I say, what can we do for you? What are you bringing this in for? How can I help you? Mm-hmm. It's like an open-ended question to let them tell me what they want done to their guitar. I don't want to push any of because I'm going to look at the guitar, and in 2 seconds, I'm going to see 6 different things. Immediately, I open a case, and I'm already scanning for things. And I'm going to notice that I may mention after I let them explain to me what the problem that they're having is. Or maybe they don't have a problem. Maybe they say, oh, it's just a brand new guitar. I just got it off the shelf. I just want it set up with 9s in E flat. Nothing at all. Or, hey, I heard you guys make really cool bone nuts. I know this doesn't need one, but could you do that for me or whatever? I just let them decide. And then sometimes they just say, I don't know what's wrong with it. It doesn't work. I plug it in, it doesn't work. And it's like, okay, well, yeah, clearly it doesn't work, but do you want us to set it up too? If we can get electrical working, do you want to set up? Do you want this nut is garbage? Would you like a bone nut? We try and work with and sort of figure out what they want, because I only want to do what they want, and I don't want to be seen as upselling or like taking advantage of someone who's new and doesn't know the terms.
I feel like having them come in and tell you what's going on with their instrument really does build that trust.
Oh yeah, and then
you're letting them diagnose a little bit.
Yeah,
not diagnose, but mention their symptoms.
Well, and it could be something I would never find out. Like, she plays with a capo on fret 7, but the guitar's tuned to open D. And it's like, I would never find that buzz because I don't play an open D with a capo on fret 7. So if I didn't ask her, what's the problem? She says, oh, well, when I'm in this tuning and I capo here and I play this chord, it rattles. And it's like, oh, okay, now we're working with something. Now I know what to work for.
Yeah. So does everybody take the jobs in, or is that just you?
Mostly it's me, and that's because, and it's a problem because I started this brand like myself. It's my own business, sole proprietor. Yes. People know me. They want to speak to me. They've been my clients for 15 years. Yeah. It's hard for some people to have someone else look at the guitars. But we're working on that. I just spent a week away, and the boys did it themselves. Kurt in the mornings and Jake in the evenings. And there was no fires. There was no heartaches. I didn't get any less than 5-star Google reviews while I was gone. Nothing. Yeah, it didn't burn. The boys did an excellent job. And there was a couple of things where they said, Steve will call you when he gets back. If too complicated, if they didn't know how to quote it, or the client didn't feel comfortable leaving it with them or whatever, I'll just call them when I get back. But yeah, ideally I'm trying to do only the things that I do. So if anybody can write the invoice, somebody else should be writing the invoice, because not everybody can put binding on this guitar.
Yeah.
It should be the one who's putting, and this is a retop, not everybody can make and brace the top and make the rosette. Show you pictures. Violin maple.
Oh, hey, that looks great.
So there's certain jobs that only I can do, and I should be doing 80% of my time should be spent on the jobs that only I can do, and I should be able to delegate the rest so that I then can spend more time on what I call the stress job. Like I just call it the stress pile, which is like this retop. I'm charging the guy $100, which is like not even the cost of wood.
Yo!
I know, but it's because he's a really good client, and I did a retop for him like 10 years ago, and it's there all the top left Droid one.
Yeah.
And his dad like played through it. Like he actually used this guitar so much, and I braced it so lightly. I was being ambitious. It was one of the first bracing, acoustic bracing things. So I was being pretty ambitious with like how lightly I braced it, especially for the style of player. Now I know that he's more of like a hammer strummer kind of guy. I'm going to put a pick guard on it so he doesn't wear through the top. But I said I would just do it for him for basically materials, because I like the fact that he brought it back and had worn through the 3 retops that I had done. And so, unfortunately, because it doesn't pay anything, I can't get any of the guys to do it, because I can't. It's not fair for me to ask them to work for free. So I just do those ones, or the projects, which are usually jobs that I misquoted and are going to take double the hours. You start getting
sense. That makes sense.
Thing, and then get into it, and you go, oh, this isn't going to be 6 hours. This is going to be 12 hours. Shit.
Yeah.
And if I bill, it's not worth that. Like the guitar's not worth that. He's not going to authorize to spend that much money on it. He did authorize this quote at 6 hours. So I'm just going to do what it takes. I'm going to spend the 12 or 15 hours and do it right so that he's so thrilled. And then next time I will bill the proper amount. Like I will learn.
There's a nice freedom in that.
Yeah. And I also do that for jobs. This is the last point I was going to make, is the 80-20 rule. So it works both ways. 80% of your money will come from 20% of your clients.
Yeah.
In any business, in any field, 80% of the revenue comes from 20% of the clients. So you want to focus on that which generates 80% of the revenue. Whatever that may be, whatever your shop specializes in, whatever you can do differently than the other shops in town. So for us, it's same day or next day service. I only book 2 or 3 days out so that I know tomorrow, Monday morning, my phone's going to ring at 10 a.m. as soon as we open, with a guy being like, I got a show this week on Friday. Is there any way I can squeeze my guitars in? It's like, sure, bring them today. We'll have them done tomorrow for you. No problem. It's like, that's sort of our niche. But it works the opposite way. 80% of your problems come from 20% of your clients. So fire those people as clients. I'm not even joking. I'm dead serious.
Oh, I know. Oh, I know.
Problem clients. And you can be polite. You can be respectful. I do it by over-quoting. I just charge way too much. So like usually for me, it's ding repairs, like small dents. People who want like a tiny little dent repair are typically people, in my experience, who will spend more time looking at their guitar than playing their guitar. And that's fine. If you're one of those type of people, you just have to go somewhere else. I just don't do that anymore. I spent way too much time. I've eaten way too many hours trying to do ding repairs. So now we charge a minimum of an hour So if your ding is like smaller than your pinky fingernail, it's going to cost you almost $200. You're probably, hopefully, just going to say no. It's too expensive. I don't want to. So that's how we like dissuade or fire those type of jobs. And if they bleed, that's per ding. So I see 3 dings. So now it's going to be $500 to fix these 3 dings. Now, can you say no? Like, please say no. I don't want to do this. Yeah.
Okay, just as an aside, plug for the Ding Kings group in the Luth group. We're learning how to do those dings and make a buttload of money if you're Steve Rozitis.
Yeah, and I can, like, I'm really good at it because I've done them for years, so I can do it in less than an hour. I just hate it.
Yeah. I agree. I think you should eliminate the things that don't bring you joy. I think that the things that you're taking on in your shop, the projects and the pain in the butt jobs, the ones you don't get paid a lot for, well, if that's the stuff that you love to do, then you've got a business that manages to make money quite efficiently. You should be doing the stuff you like doing. That's awesome.
Yeah, exactly. And then that stuff, it doesn't generate money like today when I bind this guitar and sell the whole thing for $100, which doesn't even cover the cost of wood and binding glue and stuff. But that guy will tell someone else. Like for the next 10 years, you just have no idea the ripple that little stone that you throw, into the karmic pool will affect. It works. It totally works. Like if you're good, honest, and you're like, I'm in Canada, so if you keep your stick on the ice, eventually the puck, once in a while, you get a bounce. Like you just get a lucky bounce. The puck will hit. But if you're not in front of the net, if you're not fighting for position, if your stick's not on the ice, you're not ready, the puck will just go right by you. You know, like you have to be ready for it. And so when we have slow weeks, that's how I got into building guitars. Is I wanted to be at the bench, even though I wasn't making any money. I wanted to be at the bench in case clients showed up to the store. It looks like I'm busy. It looks like I'm working on guitars. So I would buy like the StewMat kit, and I built an acoustic guitar. And then I had a client come in, and he wanted to do one of those. And so we worked on it together. And then we thought, well, if we could build all the pieces to this kit, we could build our own acoustic guitar because we've already done it from the kit to completion. Now let's just do it like from lumber to the kit. And so we did that, and we built our own acoustic guitar. And I used to do it when it was slow. I haven't had a slow week for like 3 or 4 years, but that's how we got into building guitars. And once I can get this place, it's going to take another 6 months or so to get like the well-oiled machine so it actually flows, and I have a few hours a day. Once I'm crushing this stress pile, I only have like 3 or 4 left, and I'm sure all of you are getting PTSD when I mention the word stress pile. I guarantee you guys all have jobs that are buried in the corner somewhere that you're avoiding and have been avoiding for a long time, because I am no different. But it feels so good to get them done and to get them out. And now that I don't have, like, this is like, I think I have this one. I have a Martin D45 that somebody smashed for a bike. He like smashed it on a bike. Yeah. And I actually paid Catherine because she's really good at like structural stuff. So I did some of it. I paid Catherine for quite a few hours to do some of the rest of it, but just to relieve my own stress.
Yeah.
Just like, so I can get it out of here. I've had it for more than a year. I'm embarrassed to say that. I've had the guitar here, and I know it's a huge job that he took everywhere, and they said throw it in the garbage. Nobody would do this job for it. Nobody. And it's going to look great. Like we fixed the binding, we fixed the purfling. I just have to refinish it and buff it and then set it up. Awesome. And so I got this one. I got a 12-string Harmony that's like in pieces, literally in all the pieces, but I can count them on one hand now, like the stress jobs.
This is good. The stress is almost off now.
Yeah, so once those are all done, then I can like clean up this corner and build another rack and make another workstation and stuff like more organizational stuff.
Yeah. So hey,
I have a quick question if
what you got,
yeah,
that's okay. You had mentioned kind of setting employee rates. Would you mind going over that a little bit? I have 2 employees, and we sort of started on a percentage of the job because that's how I worked, and I heard you at the beginning talking about that structure. But the things that I start to consider, and there's payroll taxes, there's overhead, what part of the job is someone doing? What am I doing? You know, if I'm doing the intake, you know, there's labor involved in all that. So yeah, I'm just curious if we can hear a little bit more about paying your employees.
Yeah, right now, because I just recently incorporated, they're all subcontractors. So I don't actually have any employees because I'm a sole proprietor. I can't employ people. So I pay them a cash rate that's per hour based on the billable hours. And so basically it starts at $40 an hour and then goes up $5 an hour every year. So like the guy who's been with me the longest is making $75 an hour. And then my youngest apprentice, he's been here just over 1 year, so he got his raise to 45, and then his next raise will be 50. But as for the intake, and also like because for us, we do warranty stuff. So if a client comes in and wants a truss rod adjustment, you know, or a warranty right before their show, we encourage our clients to come the day before or the day of their show or their recording sessions, just to have us check the intonation, just to, you know, alleviate some anxiety, because it's quite anxious the day before you go into the recording studio. And so that sort of stuff, because we pay substantially higher than our competition, you know, like our competition's paying less than half or a third of what we pay. There's sort of an understanding that you're getting enough per hour that if you need to do 10 minutes here or 5 minutes there, they kind of just do that. We don't really keep track of that sort of stuff. However, having said that, now that I'm incorporating, we will be hiring them all as employees and it'll be a per hour thing. And I'm not quite sure how we're going to do that yet, if I'm completely honest, because you're right, with employees, there's going to be taxes, there's going to be EI, which is employment insurance. In Canada, we have the Canada Pension Plan, which has to be deducted from their pay. And then there's some other stuff like vacation pay and whatever. And so I honestly haven't even had those conversations yet with the tax people because I just got a business credit card a couple of weeks ago. I was using my personal bank account and my personal credit cards this whole 15 years because I am not very organized when it comes to this side of things. So I'm not sure exactly how it's going to work once they shift from subcontractors to employees, but I think it'll be very similar. I think the hourly rate will be the same. They just may see less take-home pay because they have to pay taxes at the source instead of at the end of the year, kind of thing. But I want to keep their rates the same, if not more. Like nobody wants to come into work and say your wage got lowered. So I definitely don't want to be that boss that says that. But yeah, to be honest, I'm not sure exactly how it's going to work. But right now,
that's all.
Yeah, it's just piecework.
Yeah, I started out more like the commission type thing, and there is a difference, especially when you come to the end of the year and you pay out X amount of money, or you find out that because of how fast you might have been working, you weren't really even making the minimum wage, which, you know, to some degree you go, hey man, it's your first year, like you're learning.
Well, that's
to some degree the price you pay in a way.
Yeah, and I base our shop rates on how fast I can do these jobs. You know, I've done 1,000 bone nuts. The first one, that was my first day of my apprenticeship. He said, here, make a bone nut. And it took me 8 hours to make one bone nut. We charge 45 minutes. We charge 0.75 hours to make a bone nut. Sometimes you get that last string slot and, it's too deep. You got to start again. You know, it's like they're not paying for a bone nut that was cut too deep and then filled, recut. They're paying for a brand new custom-made bone nut, and we're charging top dollar for it, so they're going to get a custom-made brand new bone nut. And sometimes that takes 2 times. Sometimes it takes 3 times. Even me, you know, like not very often, but once in a while, you know, your mind wanders for a second and you're redoing that nut, you know. And so, yeah, when you're first starting out in this industry, you're not going to make the rate. You're not going to make anywhere close to the rate. You're going to need 1,000 setups before you can even do them consistently at an hour. And then another 5,000 before you can get some of them at 45 minutes. Once in a while, sometimes we'll get like brand new custom shop guitar and all it needs is a setup. It does not take an hour, including fret level and recrown and polish, because they don't need to be recrowned. They're a brand new guitar. We basically just kiss them, make sure that they're level, because the wood sometimes moves a little when it lands in Calgary. So we just kiss them. And on Fenders, we'll do like the stripe, so you can bend up in the higher register. But yeah, it's like, unless you've done 1,000 of them, you're never going to do that in less than an hour. And that's also how you can sort of take control of your own income, because you might not get a raise every year, or your raise may, depending where you're working, may not keep up with inflation. But if you can get really good at bone nuts, and you can get really good at soldering, or really good at fretwork, and it's consistent and the quality is there, but you can increase your speed, you can give yourself a raise by just being more productive.
Mm-hmm. I like that. That's a good point.
That's really great. Yeah, that's how I tend to frame things. I don't know what's going on with my phone. Am I all stretched out in this video?
Not for me.
Oh my God, it looks completely bizarre. Sorry, I'm gonna mute again. Thank you for focusing on this for a minute. Yeah.
No problem. Any other questions?
Yeah, let's open it up. Anybody else got any questions for this guy who's grown and grown? Nate, what you got, brother?
I have one. Are you for or against posting like all your different job rates and stuff on your website or whatever? I know some people like to just estimate it when the guitar arrives, so that I don't know. Just the first part of the question. How do you do it?
So again, it depends on the market that you're in, but in my market, nobody posts the rates online. Like, you cannot find what a guitar setup costs in Calgary. So I do the opposite. I will always post our rates on our website, and that's for two reasons. Number one, we charge the highest rate in town, so I'm actually trying to dissuade people who primarily focus on price. So if price is the only most important thing for you, maybe there's somebody else that will meet you there. But unfortunately, what I've seen is, like, there's guys on Kijiji who charge $40 an hour as their shop rate. But then I look at the invoice when I get the guitar to fix, because they didn't fix it. They bill 4 hours for a setup and didn't do any fretwork. It's like, well, what did you do for 4 hours? I can do that. I can do a restring and a setup in about 15 minutes if I don't have to do fretwork. Like, if nobody's talking to me, if the phone's not ringing, if I'm actually at my desk working, that's not a 4-hour job. And so oftentimes people who are looking at like the cheapest price get burned by those guys who are just charging more hours. And I want them to kind of unfortunately, they have to learn that themselves. And then when they're ready to understand why we charge so much, or they just read our Google reviews. We have hundreds of 5-star reviews. They say, great prices, charge me less than the big store did, because the big store charges 3.5 hours for a fret level. We only charge an hour, so it's cheaper, even though we charge more per hour. So yeah, number one, I want to dissuade people. So I always post our prices online. It's on my phone. If you phone me and I don't pick up, it says hours, location, and prices are all available on my website, because I don't want to take that phone call. I don't want to do that text. If you can just find it on the website. And then the other thing too is people see that, and when they're ready to come here, when they've swallowed the, oh fuck, it's going to be $160 an hour to get my guitar fixed, they come in and they realize the job that they thought was going to take 3 hours is only an hour or an hour and a half. They're like, oh, that's it? It's that cheap? And what I find is we get tips. We're charging $160 an hour and we get tips. Like, people will throw me a 20 or whatever once in a while. And that means that for those people, we're not even charging enough. We're not even charging enough. Like, it has nothing to do with, again, price versus value. For me, I could never imagine when I was young and poor spending $160 to fix a guitar, but that guy's not me. that girl's not me. The girl who had her show up in Edmonton who needed the setup done that day, she places the value on speed more than price.
Yep.
And so, yeah, definitely I would recommend post your prices online. It eliminates half the phone calls you're going to get and half of the problem tire kicker type clients that you're going to experience too.
Yeah, I've got mine posted as well, but once in a while I'll hear a conflicting opinion. So
no, I think
honestly,
as honesty and transparent as you can be. Like, transparency is the best policy. Honest and transparent is what people want nowadays in every business. Like, authenticity is the word of the year. Like, people want to be able to trust you. So I think being honest and transparent about your pricing is, I'm only speaking from my own experience, but it's worked for me. And then the fear, like I said at the beginning, when you raise your rates, even for me, and I've done it from 60 to almost 160, I still, every single time I do it, get that same imposter feeling, gut in my stomach, pit in my stomach. I shouldn't be doing this. I'm not worth it. And no one's going to come anymore. I still get that. And so how I alleviate that is I post it on the website in like 3 or 4 different spots. And then when I raise my rates, I only have to go to my like WordPress and change it in like 4 spots. It takes me like 5 minutes. And then I just click, I close my eyes and and then it's done. Yeah. And then I close the computer.
Yeah. Want to know how I raised my rates recently? I was like mad at a banjo or something. And so I went through my price list and I just wishfully changed a bunch of shit to like what would be cool to make on those jobs. And like 5 days later, I edited a different page of my website. Like, I changed the homepage and I hit publish, but it published all the pages. So on accident, I raised like all my prices without even knowing that I did it.
Nice.
And like, no one fucking cared. And all of a sudden I was making like $100 more per job on some shit. It was crazy. I didn't even have to stress about it because it was an accident.
That's amazing. And look, it's like the fear, and I go through this every time. Fear that you have is inside. Like, it's unfounded. It's some sort of like self-worth or lack thereof psychological problem that I have. It has nothing to do with the quality of the work, because clearly if you're giving me a tip on a $160 an hour bill, I'm not charging enough. Like, that's saying you value this even more than what I'm charging. And so you just have to do it. You got to believe the clients. Don't believe that little voice in your head that says you're not worth it or you're not good enough. Believe the clients who send you emails raving about how you changed their guitar or how you changed their life. Believe them, because for you to be around, there's a cost for that. You've got to eat. There's rent. You need clothes. Tools wear out. Like, it's not just, and the other thing too, especially if you're running it by yourself, like, and I did it for almost 10 years by myself. The intake takes time. The outtake takes time, sending the emails and the texts so you're really only able to bill like 3 to 4 hours a day in working an 8-hour day. If you're lucky, you'll get 4 billable hours in an 8-hour day. So you have to basically have the rate high enough that you can have a meager existence and don't resent your choice of career path. And then you'll resent the work, and then you resent the clients. And then that starts to show, and like, you want to avoid all of that, And how to do that is, you got to raise the rates to, the way I put it is like the dings, is I quote a quote where I would be okay if they said yes. Or like, my band got offered a gig during Stampede, and we're humming and hawing about, because the offer wasn't that great. Like, they're only offering us $800, and there's 4 of us, and we got to bring a PA, and during Stampede, it's like everybody just pays triple, and so it should pay triple, and they're not. They're just paying like the normal rates, but we don't have a gig booked that day. But if we book this one, we can't book a more lucrative one that might come down the pipe. So it's like, we had to think about it and talk about it as a band, is what's a quote that we can send back to them that we would be okay if they said yes? Because what if we double it and say, no, we want $1,600? What if they say yes? Are you going to be happy? Are you going to want to do this gig? Or are you going to be all butthurt and like resentful about doing the gig? So it's like, let's put it at a number
put the quote, or banjos, for example. Like we charge an extra half hour because I hate banjos. I hate setting up banjos. I'd rather you bring them somewhere else. It's not called our banjos. Like we'll do it. We have set up professional level, touring artist banjos, but we charge an hour and a half because they're a pain in the butt. There's so many moving parts and there's so many things to adjust, and the cross things and the skin things. Like, yeah, they just take long. And that's how we can dissuade a lot of banjos, because they come here and they go, oh, I only have $100 banjo and it's going to be $250 to set it up. I'll probably go somewhere else. I'll go to the guy on Kijiji with it.
Hell yeah, they will.
Yeah, and that's fine.
Banjo out of here.
And then that banjo guy from Kijiji can build a robust banjo repair business on his own.
Exactly.
Or her own.
Work for everybody. There is enough work. I've been doing this for 15 years, and I still get people coming in saying, I didn't even know you could set up a guitar. I didn't know a guitar could get set up. I've been playing guitar for 10 years. My buddy says he brought his guitar here, and it plays so much better that I didn't even know you could set up a guitar. Like, the market is still so uninformed or uneducated about what it is that we do, that like you got to get away from the mindset of if you get a job, someone else is losing that job.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's more jobs out there than there are luthiers. There's so much work. Like I'm sure everyone here is busy, right? Are you guys all busy? Like busier than you want to be? I'm seeing lots of nods. Yeah, most people.
That's the general consensus.
Yeah, and in my city, everywhere else is 3 to 6 weeks for a set. Like they're busy. The stores I go, they have 100 guitars in the wait list. It's insane. Like there's no like robbing Peter to pay Paul, or like you're benefiting at the expense of the other techs. It's like, no, there's enough work to go around. Because you can create more work. That's the other thing, is if I start building guitars again, once we start building guitars again, every guitar that we build needs a fret job, needs a nut, needs a saddle, needs the pick guard installed, needs the tuner installed.
Yeah.
I've got a team now that can do all that stuff and needs hours. And so it's like, I can create jobs for them by building guitars.
Right. Yeah.
If I build a spray booth, I don't personally want to do it, but I get enough requests for refinishing guitars that I could hire somebody. I just don't have the infrastructure. I don't have the fan and the vents and stuff and the filters. But if I had the space, and the next iteration of this will definitely have a spray booth, and I'll hire somebody to do finish work because there's a huge demand for it. And amp repairs too. I don't know.
Yeah. That's what I've been telling people in our area too, if they want to get into this. Dude, there's no shortage of work, but if you want jobs right now, amps and finishing.
Yeah, there's tons. We don't advertise amp repairs. I don't tell people we fix, not on our website. And I get like 3 or 4 amps a week, just clients. And I have a local amp repair guy who comes and picks them up, and he just subcontracts. And again, to go back to your first question about employees, so let's say you want an amp guy. You needed an amp guy, because I don't really fix amps. I can change your tubes and do a bias. And I've done a couple Frommel mods like on my own stuff, but I'm not an amp tech. I don't even want to be working on an amp. I'd rather work on guitars.
Right.
I do some amp work for some clients, but I thought to myself, how am I going to get an amp guy? Because all these clients are asking me, hey, do you do amps? I got broken amps, and if I can come to one spot, drop my guitar and my amp off, I'll give you money. Like, please just fix my amp. And it's like, okay, well, I won't fix it, but there's a guy in town who does. So I called him. We went for lunch. I want to pay you your rate. I don't even want you to take a cut. I want you to charge me full rate, just like these were your private clients. And what I'm going to do is just charge 20% on top of that, like convenience fee, that they don't have to go to 2 places, because that's actually like 40 minutes outside of town. So it's not super convenient to get to, but he doesn't want to deal with the phone calls, with the emails, with the money, with the intake, the outtake. He would love to just get amps. So I take all that work from him and pay him his whatever he wants, his going rate. So he's happier, because the work that he gets from me, he doesn't have to do all the bullshit, the bureaucracy. And then I'm happy because my clients get their amps fixed in a reasonable amount of time, And so that's how then the staff doesn't cost you anything, right? You just add a 20% fee on top of what he charges you or she charges you, whoever's doing the amps. And I mean, the problem is then once you start building a team, you're going to realize that some people just suck. Like this is my third amp guy, and he's great. Yeah, he's fantastic. But the first two were just less than fantastic. So that takes time.
Yeah, building that trust and being able to maintain those promises when it's beyond your control must be a little bit scary.
Well, and that's the conversation I had to have with him is if you don't want to do it or you're not in take your rate or whatever, it's not worth doing, don't even take it. I'll just say no for you. I'll be the bad guy and just say no, he doesn't. And so he doesn't do solid state repairs. He doesn't do mesa boogies because they're just a nightmare on the inside. Like there's so much in there. And he prefers to like, that's what his specialty is. And he'll do Marshalls and he'll do whatever. I have a Marshall and an Orange and a Dr. Z here for him next week. But he prefers like vintage Fenders. But yeah, if you can network with even a banjo, if you hate banjos, network with the banjo repair guy. Or there's a violin store in town where I buy all my strings there, like the weird ones. If I need like banjo strings or whatever, ukulele strings that I don't stock, I'll go to his little music store. And he does all the repairs for the Philharmonic. He does the like basses and the cellos and that sort of stuff. And I was in there last week and he said, would you be interested in violins for me? I just wrote a proposal to the school board to do all the violins for the whole Calgary school board. So like one school might have 100 violins and there's like 100 schools, like there's a lot of violins that could be coming my way. And I'm just one guy. So maybe we could work out a deal. I know you guys have a team over there and dude, yeah, you name the rate and, we'll work out a deal, like you tell me what you need to make off of these and then I'll figure out how I can pay the crew and we will get these violins done for you, and that way everybody's happy. The school's happy because they get them back right away. They want speed. You can't take 3 months to fix 100 violins. They just need new strings and a quick setup kind of thing and a tuning. Anything more complicated, sure, you can do all those cracks and the broken necks and stuff, but 80% of them are just going to need new strings and a quick setup. And we can do that for you.
That's awesome.
Yeah, there's other
good teamwork.
Yeah, like friendly competition. Don't be like it's better to be in the good books with your competitors. Like one of the other main shops in town, or the main shop, like my main independent repair shop competitor, they happen to also be the Fender. They're a licensed Fender dealer. So I buy all my Fender parts from them. Like I'd rather just spend the money in town and talk to those guys about business. And, they tell me to watch out. This guy's an asshole, that don't serve this client. Or we had a stolen guitar come last week. Watch out for this one. Like it's better to be in good books and to like know your competition than it is to not. Because there's some people who like won't even give you the time of day because they know that you're a tech and you're their competition kind of thing.
Yeah, good point.
So I find it's better to have like a more collaborative attitude and friendlier because they might do something that you don't. Like finish jobs. I send finish work to I tell them they have a UV spray booth so they could do the poly, the UV cured poly. It was like a $20,000 spray booth with the lights and stuff. And I don't want to I hate those jobs. So I'd much rather give the jobs that stress me out to my and then they're backed up another 2 weeks. And then I get all the easy jobs that want to get done today.
Genius.
It works out. Yeah, it works out.
Steve, you've given us a bunch of good nuggets. It's good to hear your story from
the horses
feeling like you can't keep a job to you can't keep up with the jobs. This is awesome.
Yeah, we cannot keep up. It's insane.
Yeah. Well, I'm looking forward to seeing what comes next for you guys as you continue to renovate and add staff and add services. It's wicked.
Nice. Thanks. Yeah, we'll be finishing the renos and probably adding 1 or 2 more desks, organizing it, and then we'll start. Because I would to make like 400 acoustic guitars. this whole guitar repair thing is just like a path to get me into making acoustic guitars, because I realized very early on that it's, unless you're Joel Michaud, it's almost impossible to make a living building acoustic guitars. Like, it's so hard. You got to sell your guitars for 15 grand, like, or 20 grand.
And there can only be one Michaud made.
I know, and I'm not even anywhere. I'm on his wait list though. He's gonna make me one.
Yay!
Yeah, but that's like the end goal. Is I want to have like a small batch acoustic guitar, and I will also build electrics, but only if I can get the wood sourced. That there's like a story. Like if I get a beam from the old city hall or something like that. Make a bunch of tellies. There's a music venue that's about to get torn down, and I'm gonna try and get one of the beams, and then make a bunch of like tellies out of them.
Oh, that's cool.
But yeah, that's the next plan.
Okay, so takeaways from this conversation are definitely get your wills in order. Get your life insurance figured out, because you love the people who love you, and keep growing, because there's capacity and room in the market to do so.
Oh, clearly. Yeah, if you guys are all this busy, if every shop in my town is 100 guitars deep, I don't think this industry is going to get taken by AI anytime soon.
I don't think so. I don't think AI is going to touch it. So again, this is Steve Rozitis from R Guitars. He is at R_guitars on the Instagrams. Thanks so much, Steve. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thanks for hanging out and listening to my story. And if you're ever in the Calgary area, just drop me a line and pop by. I'd be happy to give you a tour.
It's awesome. You be careful. These guys might do it. We had one New Yorker head to Alberta a couple months ago.
Nice. Yeah, it's sort of my mission. Every time I go to a new city, I want to go to see the guitar shops and just I want to see where the tools are laid out and how many guitars they have in the pile, that sort of stuff.
Or in the bathtub.
Yeah, or in the bathtub. Yeah.
Great. Thanks so much, Steve.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Thanks everybody. Good to see you.
Thanks, Steve.
Thanks, Steve. Thanks, Chris.
Yeah, thanks, Steve. It was great.
Thank you.
I'm going to subscribe. I'll hang out in the Luth group.
Yes.
Yeah, do it.
Please
I
do.
will.
Thank
Totally
you.
will. Okay, see you guys.
Thanks, Chris.